All right, round two. Let's do it again. It's really good. My voice was tripping, but I think the show worked out pretty well. Oh, yeah. Don't know good society, do I? Well, I know enough to turn you inside out, old gal, you sock-dologizing old man-trap.
Lisa boy, this paper makes you wear all my property in England. Boy, you reckon I pricked up my ears about that time. Well, by the minister came, and I reckon that he had a 3-day fight with the devil for that old land's soul. He finally got the upper hand and second at last. The minister, he went on his way. The old squire comes back into his room again. He was changed from what he was before. He was as pale as the sheet that covered. And I saw his hair flowing out from under his red cap with big old silvery locks. And from his big blue eyes came a pair of tears rolling down his furrowed cheek like a pair of little streams. And when he spoke, his voice was different from what it was. It was like the whisper of the wind in a pine forest in wintertime. Low and awful. And he says to me, "Hey, Sarat, I feel I have sinned and hardened my heart to my own flesh and blood. But I was not wrong. The light that is left. Bring me the light," says he. Well, I brought him his candle right quick. He took that paper I was telling you on, and he twisted it up just as I might please. He took his candle from his bedside, and he took the fire, that paper just as I might list. And as he watched it burn slow away, he says, "There's a boy that act disinherits you, and makes my own one to wear my daughter's sweet darling child, Miss Mary Meredith." And he heaved a great sigh and sank back on his pillow as though he felt relieved. And that was it. The whole part check.
My poor grandfather.
I reckon I'll leave her alone. Look, there lies $400,000 there to sink. Hey, sport, you're a hunk.
Fool to me. You will wrong poor grandfather. He thought that I should be like oh, the pity was over an hour ago. No longer
Why?
You missed the
Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Where's your slice? Almost missed. I mean, that's the risk. I got really. It's wrong. That's the torture.
That's not something that looks like a whole lot like Abraham Lincoln.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy the Can I shoot him?
Bro, why did Swan sit right by chair?
So I had to pull out Ooh, that'd be hard.
See, broken. See, don't look broken to me.
Somebody made a heart out of it.
See, don't look broken to me now.
That was close to my food.
It's not close.
Back
Right up. Okay.
Got jump on the stage.
That me up right. Hold up, got me up right.
The other hand.
Got me up right. There it is. Got me up. Come on, I'm wearing too much. No. Bro, I'm out there some bullfrog. I'm sorry, but she get my blood bubbling when she come in. It's up the bullfrog.
Sit down. Next up.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing?
You got
Sit down. Well, he's a shooter. John was Mexican. Oh, John was Mexican.
Hey, Jose. Hey, that's right.
What's wrong?
You are supposed to be.
I watched the play show.
Hey.
Just bound to hit it.
Guys, my fancy girls is burning on y'all. Get on.
Walking right here.
Oh,
my bad.
Yes, here.
Work,
And
Mr. Swanson.
suitor for your daughter's hand. Why, you
That's
wouldn't
it?
treat me the way some gals below the pool. Once they found out I'm already.
Watch it. He's gonna run in. He's gonna. Yeah.
Yo, where he at? I'm on the table.
Watch this girl.
Well, no, the old squire thought better on it and made his own sweet daughter's daughter cry.
No one can leave that window every
Yes, Timmy there.
He said my sandwich is
I stopped the shoot earlier. I was getting
I mean, if you want to use it,
Okay,
then
I'm just a little
Turn the phone off.
So irresponsible.
there he is. Yes, not the nasty beast. You don't know the manners of polite society.
Don't know the manners of good society, eh? Well, I guess I'm not enough to turn you inside out, old gal. Stop apologizing, old man.
Sick! Stepper! Tyrannus! The South is avenged! You're in my way! Tell us I'll put him in the window.
Ansley, close the window.
And you man, sit there and stand. Our president has been shot.
That's what he told me my chair was broken.
Hey, what happened to the president? He got shot in the back of the head. He fake died.
Hey guys, it's just me. I really think for this part.
You in the military, you got it.
Mr. Trinchon, what have you gone and done?
Nothing but my two things better.
Bravo! Bravo! Thank you. I love it. Come again.
of Abraham Lincoln.
Oh,
Hey guys, Mr. Swanson.
I got scared.
Here to talk about
Swanson, you stress me out.
the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Tired? Ansley, I'd like to point out that the seat is broken. Don't sit here.
And
All
listen,
right.
I closed the window because the first one minute comment about you coming through the window, so I shut it.
Ms. Taylor got to hand out a little follow along for today. Thank you. And my goal here is a brief conversation. I'm going to tell you the story of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. There is a little follow along, okay? And then, back after the hour, we are going to get to watching about a 30-minute episode of a TV show that is about time travel. Now, is that history?
Yeah, Peabody.
Well, you have to suspend reality a little bit, right? Acknowledge. You have to pretend a little bit when we talk about time travel.
What
But we are going to talk about the what ifs. What if we could travel back in time? Would we save Lincoln?
Yes.
Would it help or harm history? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. Kind of a fun thought process to get to. So here we have it. Now we talked all about Abraham Lincoln. We had a lot of good conversation.
Listen, man. You already got tickets on me.
About the Civil War. You got that helping my voice be struggling.
I'm gonna help him, man.
We got to bring to this class all that we've already learned about Civil War. Okay, we've had a lot of conversation. You got to bring that here. Now for yes. That was a good one. That's Carmen from the Spanish class. You cannot thank Miss Harris. Hey, Carmen.
Oh,
Facilitating today's class.
Caramelo.
I took a picture with him.
Hey, Carmen.
I don't know why I see that.
Hey,
Looking deep in the eyeballs. You looking deep in the eyeballs?
I said economic. I said.
All right. So first, let me walk now, fellas. It's a good conversation. Let me get through it. First, let's walk a little bit of the timeline, right, leading up to the night that Lincoln was shot. Have you ever heard about the time Lincoln got kidnapped by Confederate troops? No, you haven't, because it didn't happen.
Yes.
But it was planned. It was planned. John Wilkes Booth, the man who eventually shoots Abraham Lincoln, here I am. John Wilkes Booth planned to kidnap Abraham Lincoln on March 20th, 1865. John Wilkes Booth and 6 others. Here's what they were going to do. They knew Lincoln's regular driving route. His horse and carriage would go along this road all the time. They were going to wait in the woods. They were going to pop out. They were going to grab him from the carriage. They were going to kidnap him. Now, sometimes a big part of the Lincoln story is where was the security guard? Why wasn't he more protected? We have to understand it's just a different time period. Secret Service and security just wasn't quite the same. So it is reasonable that the President of the United States could be approached by some guys on the road. They could come right up to his carriage. And these guys, their plan was to kidnap him. Well, here's what happens on that day. Lincoln takes a different route. He changes it up. We don't really know why. He just goes a different direction. And the conspirators, they're in the wrong place. Lincoln doesn't come by. They are not able to kidnap him. I think that makes them happy or mad?
Mad.
Yeah, it makes them mad. They missed their chance. Well, the conspiracy at that point kind of fades away. Okay, of the 7 of them, Wilkes Booth and 6 others, they don't stay quite as close to each other. They go their different directions. They're still Confederate sympathizers. They're still for the South, but they missed their opportunity to kidnap Lincoln right there. Andrea?
What if Lincoln then knew that they were going to kidnap them?
I don't know. Just so I'm a big reader, got a lot of details, in my brain. I don't know the whole, I don't know if there's a detail out there that made him go a different direction. Really? You know what I give to it? I give to it that our small life decisions can have big changes, right? What if you leave early? What if you leave late? Maybe you miss that car crash that would have happened otherwise. I know. My point is that sometimes those small decisions make big changes. There's good examples of Robert E. Lee almost being assassinated in the Civil War. Or not assassinated like Lincoln, but shot by a sniper. Sniper misses by an inch, grazes past his cheek, changes the war, right? Small things can have big changes. So all that to say, on March 20th, Lincoln was not kidnapped, And of course, that continues our story. Take it to April 2nd. Things are happening fast here. Richmond, Virginia, which is the capital of the Confederacy. It falls to the Union Army. It is captured by the Union Army. So momentum in the war is going the direction of the Union. It looks as if the South will be losing. John Wilkes Booth, now as you can imagine, was a Confederate sympathizer. So he, of course, is very upset about the fall of Richmond.
Is it Wilkes or Milks?
Wilkes.
I thought it was Milkes.
What?
Some Milkes Booth.
I swear I thought it was Milks.
I like those questions, but at the same time, I gotta get through this so we can get
Teenage.
Now, John Wilkes Booth is in the North. Even though he's a Southern sympathizer, his profession, he's an actor, a stage actor, keeps him in the North. Actually, he's in Washington, D.C., the capital of the North. As a Southern sympathizer in the North, what do you think he is seeing on the day that Richmond falls to the Union?
Bombs.
Celebrations, right? Washington, D.C. is very happy. Flags are waving, songs are being sung, marching band is happening. John Wilkes Booth, as a Southern sympathizer, how do you think he feels in the middle of all this celebrating?
Angry.
That's exactly right. He gets angrier. He grows more angry by seeing these Northern celebrations. Well, take us 1 week later, April 9th, 1865. We've already talked about this. This is when Lee surrenders to Grant. And for all intents and purposes, this is the end of the war. The war is almost over. Now, there are still other Confederate forces out there. There are other generals. It is not the official signature of peace. But for all intents and purposes, Lee surrendering to Grant pretty much brings an end to the Civil War. We've already talked about this. Same story. John Wilkes Booth is in Washington, D.C. Lee surrenders to Grant. How does this make Booth feel?
Mad.
Mad. Disappointed is a great thought, Marquand. He thought that the South should continue to fight. He thought that the South could continue a guerrilla war. Remember shooting behind the trees, live to fight another day? He thought the South could continue the war. He thinks it's dishonorable that Lee surrendered. So I really like the word disappointment there, because that's pretty true. From this, Booth, he actually, in the days after this, Lincoln gives a speech from the White House where, I know this is hard to imagine, it's not how it happens today. He opens the window and he just starts speaking from the windowsill. And everybody gathered around, a couple hundred people, they basically give this impromptu speech from the president. Now, how it happens today? Today, there's video cameras and podiums and notes and teleprompters and all that kind of stuff. But Lincoln gives an impromptu speech following the surrender of Lee, and Booth is there to witness this speech. He's in the crowd that's listening to this speech. And in the speech, I don't have the exact quotes, but in the speech, Lincoln talks about emancipation of African Americans, equal rights, equal jobs, voting. He gives a big, strong statement about equality for the white man and the African man. John Wilkes Booth, a strong Southern sympathizer from a family of slave owners, one who believed that the war should continue. And actually, he's just downright racist. If you read some of his writings, and he kept extensive journals, he's just downright racist towards African Americans. How do you think John Wilkes Booth feels about this speech from Abraham Lincoln?
He hates his guts.
Hates it, disgusted. Right now, I'm disgusted at Booth, but he's disgusted by Lincoln. Jay, you got your hand up? What you got?
So if like John Wilkes did this today, you think he would even made it out?
That's a great
Why
question.
you got it made it in?
Let me get through all of it. Would he have even made it in? Probably not.
I have a question.
Security wise, probably not.
What even had the gun?
Yeah, hang on. I'll tell you the whole story. I promise. So this event is another major event that makes Booth angrier. I like all the words you're throwing out. Disappointed, disgusted, angry. He's a Southern sympathizer. With the North winning the war, he is getting angry. And he feels that he missed his chance with the kidnapping, so he's really motivated to do something. If kidnapping is not going to work out, maybe I just need to kill the president. Well, that leads us to the big, famous day, famous because of what happened on it, April 14th, 1865. And it was not a notable day when it began. When it began, 5 days after the surrender of Lee, President Lincoln says, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to relax. I'm going to go to the theater and just hang out with my wife. You know what? Let's even have a double date. I'm going to call up General Grant and keep the wife.
Wait,
Yes, ma'am.
I need Ainsley Roberts for checkout, please.
On the
I
way.
got a question.
Thank you.
Question.
Did Abraham Lincoln have kids?
He did. He did. I'll tell you about his family here in just a second. You guys got good questions? I like you asking them, but let me finish this. Let me tell the story. We're gonna get some answers here, I promise. Abraham Lincoln, at this time, he could have gone to two theaters. There were two main theater houses in Washington, D.C. One called Grover's. I'm glad you got to see the show. Check Google Classroom for the rest of it. One theater was called Grover's, and at Grover's, you know what was playing at Grover's that night? The brand new, hot off the presses, opening of Aladdin. Aladdin, the story of Aladdin. That was the new show in town. Playing at Ford's Theater on its 1,000th showing. This show is going to hit its 1,000th showing. It's a play called Our American Cousin. Our American Cousin is what you were seeing on the screen when you came into class and when I walked into class. So you might be able to guess, Lincoln did not go to Grover's. He did not go see Aladdin. He went to Ford's Theater and he saw Our American Cousin. Kind of notable that it was the 1,000th showing of it. Tradition from back in the day was that on a landmark showing like that, the whole show, the money from the tickets for the whole show would go to the lead actor or actress. In this case, it was a young lady named Miss Laura Keene. Laura Keene was an A-lister. Today, who's an A-list actress you might think of?
Michael B. Jordan.
That's an actor, Michael B. Jordan. Who's an actress, a woman?
Somebody.
Oprah Winfrey. She does film. She does actress. Okay, I'll buy it. I'm thinking like Julia Roberts,
Miley Cyrus,
Halle Berry, Scarlett Johansson.
What's that light skin girl name?
These are A-list. Right. A-list.
Oh, you know,
now
I came in like a
Halle Berry. We'll stay with Halle Berry.
What's the name though?
Okay, back on track. Laura Keene was an A-list actress. And it was kind of an honor to be in her 1,000th showing. So that is why a lot of people believe Lincoln goes to Our American Cousin. Okay? So he chooses Ford's Theater. Remember, it's the small choices. Small choices add up to a big thing happening. This is Ford's Theater right here. Okay, it's not that notable. It's just a building. There's dirt streets. Like there's not a big parking lot. Thinking back to security, it's not like there's a bunch of metal detectors or anything like that. It's just Ford's Theater. Now, Slade, you recently went there, right? Pretty cool. This is the inside of Ford's Theater. Slade, did you see something pretty similar to that? No. So this has been refurbished, it's been redone, but you can kind of tell what it would have looked like that night. On the floor, I'm going to show one more picture here. On the floor, there were seats, obviously to the left of the screen. That's where the stage itself was. And then where, if you were to take a guess, where would Lincoln be sitting?
Right there. The top.
Yeah, in the what? Booth or the presidential
John
Wilkes
booth.
Well, that's not the point to be made there. Presidential box. Presidential box. It was a special place for VIPs, right? And when the president would come visit, he would sit in the presidential box. Now, it's really hard to tell from this picture here, maybe hard to have perspective, but it's about 12 feet off the ground. I'd say that me to Jetaria is probably about 12 feet. 12 feet. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Like, could I kind of run to you real fast, close the distance if I needed to? 12 feet. 12 feet's not that. I'm saying 12 feet's not that much, right? Now, it was elevated, but 12 feet, the president could see the actors. The actors could see the president. They could talk to each other with their voices if that's what it came to, right? 12 feet's not that big of a distance. That's how far away the box was from the stage. And that's going to be notable for part of the story here in a second as well. So this is Ford's Theater. This is what it looks like. Now I'm going to tell you key players in the story. Here's a list of them here. I'm going to go over all of them. First, in the box itself with the Lincolns is Major Henry Rathbone and his fiancee, Clara Harris. They're not married, but they're pledged to be married, right? Fiancee. Major is kind of a low rank in the Army. Now, the reason, it's a middle rank. I should say a middle rank in the Army. The reason Major Henry Rathbone was invited to sit with Lincoln that night is because, here's some side players in the story, General Grant turned him down. Now, we've talked about Ulysses S. Grant. Think about it. April 14th, 1865, Lee has just surrendered to Grant. If you're Grant, you're a four-star general, you get a message from the president that says, would you like to join me at the theater tonight? What are you going to say? Yeah. Why?
No, I might not.
Because it's the president.
I'm
It's his boss, right? The elected president and then the military commander, they have an important relationship. And it's the president. Do you know why Grant said, do you know why Grant declined the invitation?
I got to guess.
What's your guess?
It's probably like he was fresh off of
war and stuff. Like he wanted to just chill with his wife and kids.
That's a real solid.
Or he was
guess.
working with Booth.
Slade's going conspiracy side. Maybe he's working with Booth. That's not the case. Any other guesses?
Maybe he's tired.
He didn't like Lincoln.
He didn't like Lincoln? How about this? You're getting warmer. How about this? She didn't like Mrs. Lincoln.
Oh,
Ooh.
the two ladies.
Okay,
so
so
no
the
bad.
ladies had
I
a
hit.
spat. Yeah. So Mrs. Grant, and I'll show you the next picture, Mrs. Lincoln, they didn't like each other.
Well, they married.
So because of that, we get Major Henry Rathbone in the story.
Whoa,
Actually,
that's deformed.
Lincoln invited Grant, then he invited several others, and then finally he made it to Rathbone and Harris. So they were like slim pickings, okay? They were the only ones available to accept the invitation. Just like Slade said, it's the president, so they're going to accept the invitation, especially if you're a lower ranking guy. So they are in the box that night with the Lincolns. We already said the Grants were not, and in the end, that's pretty important because what if Booth had also had a chance to kill General Grant? That would have been bad for the Union. Also in the box that night, of course, is the Lincolns.
So that would be like a good thing he didn't win.
It's a good thing, right? Small decisions that change history. So we have the Lincolns, and I want to make this point to you. The Lincolns were not immune from tragedy. The Lincolns, Mary Todd Lincoln, she was often called manic or crazy. She was known to consult spiritualists. She even had seances in the White House, right? Little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah.
Do you have a guess as to why?
Childhood trauma.
Trauma is true. What makes a mama go crazy?
Her kids. Her kids.
Her kids, and specifically losing a child.
Oh, she about to channel the kids.
So she's the one in Mexico. Let me see.
So Harris is right. The reason she used spiritualists was to try to connect with her children. Obviously, a lot of people believe that's on the satanic side, or that's not Christian or whatever. So a lot of people didn't really appreciate that the White House was kind of the home of spiritual activity. That's different for different days. The Lincolns were not immune to tragedy. They lost a toddler in 1850, and that's well before the war. They also lost an 11-year-old in 1862, in the middle of the war. He's the president of the United States, but his 11-year-old son died. So would that lead to some trauma in your life?
Yes.
Even, especially in the middle of the war. So he's the president. That's a lot of responsibility. He's fighting a war. That's obviously a lot of important responsibility, and his son died. So the Lincolns have had a rough life.
That's
right?
sad.
Just because they're powerful, just because he's the president, doesn't mean that they have a smooth life. They've had a hard life too. So going to the theater was kind of a break. It was a chance to relax, double date night, right? Let's call another couple, and we'll have a double date to the theater. That's the setup. That's what they thought they were going to do. Well, enter in me, John Wilkes Booth. This is John Wilkes Booth. Ladies, what do we think about him?
Ugly.
What do we think about him?
So you got Coochie.
Jasmine says he thinks he looks good.
He looked better.
Now, for his time period, he was considered dreamy. For his time period, he was considered good looking. His mustache, right? His hair, he was considered good looking. He's an actor, right? So that's kind of his job. His job was to be dreamy, to be good looking. He was known to have many girlfriends at the same time. He was known to write to many women. And a big thing back
That's what I like.
A big thing back then was to carry photographs in his pocket. He carried photographs of multiple women, not just one, multiple women in his pocket. So all that to say, he was a dreamy guy. He was seen as a good-looking man. Yes, sir.
Alright, so if he wanted to kill Lincoln and his wife was there, why didn't he just shoot both of them? Instead of just-
I'll get to that. That's a great question.
He
has time.
He wanted his wife.
I will get to that. I'll get to it in a second.
He has time.
So John Wilkes Booth, Southern sympathizer, right? If he's going to shoot Lincoln, that means he's for the Confederacy. He wrote a lot in his journals, right? He's a touchy-feely guy. He wrote all of his thoughts down. He is definitely anti-North. He is for secession, and he is for slavery. Okay, so he is all things about the South. Now he's actually from the state of Maryland, and that's a border state. But he is someone who he had deep South sympathies. However, he remained in the North during the war, mostly because of his profession, right? To stay in the North, to be at these acting houses, to still make money, to still be famous, all that kind of stuff. So he's a Southern guy, but stuck in the North. Obviously, that would make him really difficult. Also, he is from a famous acting family, but he was the youngest and least famous of the brothers. How would that make you feel to be the youngest and least famous?
Man.
How do you think that made him feel?
I won't give up.
Worthless, a little bit of a chip on his shoulder.
Well, I'm still famous, baby.
Prove something. So here's his brothers, Edwin, Junius, and John. This is actually the only time they appeared on the same stage together. They were in a Caesar Augustus type play, Julius Caesar type play, Shakespeare play, and so all three of them appear together. Now, it reminds me of how some celebrity families today are also famous. What's a celebrity family?
Kardashians.
Kardashians comes to mind.
LeBron's.
The what?
The LeBron's.
The James.
Who's that?
LeBron's.
He's become a
Nobody.
brother.
I want to call it James.
The family guy.
Look down
Here in
the
the whole house.
Those are all good examples. Here's what comes to mind for me. Mark Wahlberg and his
Part of his
brothers.
life.
And here's why it's a good comparison. Mark Wahlberg, he's down on the right. He's super famous.
Yeah.
He's in all the big
It
movies.
used to be a chemical.
But his other two brothers are a little bit less famous, right?
John
John Wilkes Booth was basically John Wahlberg. John Wilkes Booth was the less famous, less successful brother. So he kind of had a chip on his shoulder, right? He wanted to be more famous than he was. So how do you be famous?
You get famous.
Do something sensational. You get famous. That's right. Here's the story I'm about to tell you how it happened. I'm going to go through all of this. First things first, and I did the best I could to try to bring it to life for you. The door. I'll tell you about the door. This is the door to the presidential box. So just like I opened the door and I started creeping in, John Wilkes Booth did something very similar.
I thought it was gonna be a big.
But before he opened the door, let me zoom in on this. Do you notice anything?
They put his name in it.
Well, not quite that. What's something else you notice?
KKK.
Not quite. Slade, you see it?
Blood vein. Swanson.
Oh, bullet.
Oh,
Not a bullet hole, but a whittled hole. He carved a hole into the door. Why do you think?
To see
I
if
see.
he's there. See if he's actually there. Because he didn't want to
Now, as an actor, he would have been at Ford's Theater. Everybody would have recognized him. Nobody would have questioned him, right? He belonged at Ford's Theater. So if he's backstage and he's the famous John Wilkes Booth, it's not that big of a deal. Well, he used that fame to go to the president's box on the day of. Before the president got there, he whittled this hole into the door so that it could be
Easier.
a peephole. And what he did before he entered the door, he looked to see, okay, there he is. 2 steps, and then I got him. Okay. So he whittled a peephole into the door. That just really shows, that's a piece of evidence that shows that he was really committed to making it happen and making it happen flawlessly. So the door is a big deal. Slade, you been to Ford's Theater? Guess what? I've been to Ford's Theater too. This
oh
is
my goodness.
7th grade, Mr. Swanson, and that is the door. And that's the door.
Well, that's business.
Yeah, all right, we're on.
That was deep.
First is the door. Second is the timing. So this is Laura King. She's the Julia Roberts, Oprah Winfrey, Halle Berry, whatever you want to say. She was the lead actress in the show.
She
You
talks
see the
Halle Berry
little
now.
dress, the hair, whatever. Well, I actually, when I did it in this room just a few minutes ago, I timed it perfectly. I did the best I could, and it
He
actually
waited
worked
till
out.
everybody got loud.
That's exactly right, Slade. John Wilkes Booth knew this play inside and out. He knew every single line. He knew when the audience would laugh. He knew what a laugh line was. Clap would be a good thought too, but he knew laugh lines. So think about it. When you deliver a joke and there's a punchline, and if it's predictable and reliable, he knew that the audience was going to laugh on this particular punchline every single time. Well, the line that gets stated is, it's this punchline that says, "You sock-dologizing old man trap." And that's basically old-timey talk for "you're a difficult woman, crazy. You sock-dologizing old man trap."
I'm using it.
And I don't know if you noticed it, but the character on the screen said that right as I shot the confetti poppers. And the reason Booth waited for that line, I'll ask you, why do you think Booth waited for that line?
So they
Everybody
can't hear
laughed
the
and
whole-
everybody
Everybody can laugh is exactly right.
thing.
So and he shot right on the laugh line, and it masked the sound of his gun a little bit. He did not use a super powerful gun. Slade, you kind of asked a question. I'll tell you about the gun in just a second. He actually used just a 1-shot pistol. Okay, not multiple shots, but 1 shot. And when he shot his pistol, it was not super powerful. Like today, we would think about high powerful pistols or rifles. And in fact, like honestly,
I got
it
shot
probably
last
was
time.
just about as loud as those confetti poppers. I know you don't think confetti poppers are very loud, but the gunshot was not much louder than those confetti poppers. So it wouldn't have been on the laugh line, pop, and they're laughing. It kind of would have masked the sound. And what does that give him a chance to do?
Bang.
Escape. That's exactly right. He wanted to shoot the president, but he did also want to survive. He did not want to die in his endeavor. This is the gun itself. Slave, did you see this gun?
boy.
This is the gun John Wilkes Booth used. It's a 44 caliber. It's called a Derringer. It is actually not. It's a 5.75 inches long. It's actually a hair smaller than this Nerf gun right here.
It's smaller than that?
Tiny, tiny, tiny. So one, concealable. They could have had it in a pocket. Two, do you want to know why history believes he used the Derringer? Well, because it was dramatic. He could have used a 6-shooter. He could have had multiple guns. But history believes that he was such a drama king that he wanted to have this dramatic, theatrical moment on stage. And he used this one-shot Derringer to ensure the dramatic finale of his actions. So it's very interesting. He did not take another gun with him. He did not take a 6-shooter with him. He took a knife, but he did not take another gun with him. He only used the Derringer. This is, well, that's about the angle. That's about the angle that Abraham Lincoln found himself at. And if you were to look down the barrel of Booth's gun, that's what it would look like as well. Mark one.
Go back one slide.
Yeah, it was the
You look like one person off the drunk scene. Like if they like coming close to you, like I should take.
I think it was like July, not summer. All right, moving on. Now, what happens next? In the boot, in the box, the presidential box. He opens the door. He sneaks towards the president. He has his timing. He shoots. What happens next is that Major Henry Rathbone, right? He's a Union Army officer. He probably feels like he should be protecting the president at this point, right? He comes towards Booth. Booth takes out his knife. If he had another gun, maybe he would have shot. But he takes out his knife, and he actually gashes Rathbone from elbow to shoulder. Gashes Rathbone, cuts it pretty good, hits an artery, Rathbone starts bleeding pretty good. After he tussles with Rathbone, but remember, it wasn't Grant. If it had been Grant, and he had killed Grant, the Union probably really would have been in trouble. So it's a good thing that it wasn't Ulysses S. Grant. He fights with Rathbone. What happens next is that he jumps to the stage. I told you it was only 12. It was only 12. Come on in. It was only 12 feet. But while jumping, it is believed he got his foot caught in the flag. When he got his foot caught, it caused him to be a little bit off balance. And being off balance, what happens when you land off balance? Yeah, he hurt his left foot. Sprain or hairline fracture, he didn't snap it in two, but he hurts his leg. Jumping from the stage, which I did the best I could to jump out the window, he sprains or fractures his leg. So now he's hurt. From that, he starts to, he limps off the stage, and he starts to make his escape. I'll get a little ahead of myself. When he was on the stage, he shouts out something very notable to history. Does anybody know what he yells? Let it go. I got to vote for let it go. Not let it go. Anybody else?
Wait.
John Wilkes Booth. What does he shout?
The Union will win.
The Union will. No. He's opposite of that.
The Southern
will win.
Pretty close. Pretty close guess. He shouts, I get it as well. Sic semper tyrannis. This is a Latin phrase that means thus always to tyrants. It's basically saying, right? Thus always to tyrant. If you are a tyrant, you will die. It comes from the Shakespeare play, Julius Caesar. So ever the theatrical guy, he's trying to make a connection to theater, to Julius Caesar. He says Sic semper tyrannis. This Sic semper tyrannis is also the state motto of Virginia. So a very southern state, very proud southern state. And guess what? It is the motto of Virginia to this day. I really thought that when I went to research that, I thought for sure Virginia has a different state motto. Same state motto, Sic semper tyrannis. Now by itself, that's not a bad statement. Of course, John Wilkes Booth uses it as a Confederate or a Southern type of rallying cry. But what it's saying is, you can't run all over me. So we can learn a lot about John Booth from his phrase. He thinks that Abraham Lincoln is a tyrant. He thinks that the North is trampling on the rights of the South. And he is trying to restart, trying to restart the war by killing the president. Let me bring it into the present day. My world historians, you may remember I shared with you a little bit about the Oklahoma City bombing that happened in 1995. Well, the man who blew up that bomb, first of all, his motivations were to try to attack the federal government. Not all that different from John Wilkes Booth. His motivations were slavery.
I got a question.
His motivations were to try to attack the federal government. Well, when he blew up that bomb in Oklahoma City, and you know that's pretty personal to me, I'm from Oklahoma City, he was wearing this T-shirt that has Abraham Lincoln on it, and it says, Sic Semper Tyrannis. So it's almost as if Timothy McVeigh, and you can see in the lower right, that's the man, Timothy McVeigh. Timothy McVeigh was saying, John Wilkes Booth had it right. And now here I am in the year 1995 trying to attack the federal government. So that's a little extra. That's kind of a deep connection. Just goes to show you that Sic Semper Tyrannis is a rallying cry for people who kind of got hate in their hearts and they're trying to attack the federal government. Have I seen a hand? I see a hand. Question, what you got?
Did his brothers believe the same belief that?
Great question. Without going too deep into it, Booth's brothers did not believe the same. In fact, they were angry at him once his name got associated with this for shooting Lincoln. They distanced themselves from him. And in fact, they were Unionists. They didn't even support the Confederacy. So great example of how families were torn apart during the war. One brother thinks this, two other brothers think that, and they disagree because of it.
So why didn't they believe in slavery if they had slavery? You know?
Personal differences, right? Just because you were raised in a family doesn't mean that you all three think the same thing. It's a great question, Marquand. I got a lot of reading that maybe you could choose to do based on that, but you're a thinker. I like how you're thinking. Jake?
I think it was a video, the Timothy McVeigh dude. It was like his last name was like a pile of dirt. It might have been somebody else, but it was
That's somebody else. Moving on. All right, so from the jump, we now have the escape.
Yeah,
The escape. And Slade is exactly right. He had a horse waiting on him in the back alley. There's actually a young man holding that horse because you don't want your horse to run away. So the young man holding that horse, I get a little bit ahead of myself here, that young man got arrested for being a part of the assassination when all he did was hold the horse. A lot of people think that was a miscarriage of justice, but that's a little extra. He got the horse, right? He has the horse. He's riding his horse. What is going on with his leg? It's injured. Okay, so that's important because when you're riding a horse and you have a sprained or broken leg, it's not very comfortable. Also, something really important is to get out of Washington, D.C., you have to cross a bridge. These bridges, every single one of them, was guarded by a Union Army. So to get across the bridge, he would have to cross the Union Army. He'd have to cross soldiers. Do you know what happened when he came up to this bridge guarded by Union soldiers?
Nothing.
You might think he got shot.
That's because the message didn't get around.
Say it again.
The message didn't get around.
You guys are right on track. The message didn't get around fast enough, right? So these soldiers, they were supposed to shut down the bridge. At 10 p.m., they were supposed to shut down the bridge. But you know what? Human nature. John Wilkes Booth rolls up and is like, hey, oh man, is it 10 p.m. already? Oh, I must have lost my watch. I forgot. Hey, will you let me across? Just this once. I'll never do it again. They let him cross. So they kind of got in trouble for that, for breaking the rules because they let the assassin get away. So that's how he gets out of Washington, D.C. He has a companion with him, a young man named David Harold. And David Harold is helpful to him the rest of the journey. So this is the escape. Okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the manhunt in just a second. Once word does get out, you guys are exactly right, it takes a while, but once word does get out, spreads all throughout the nation like wildfire. The president has been shot. Lincoln has been shot. Lincoln was elevated to like a saint like this. Even if you didn't like him before, even if you disagreed with him or thought he wasn't doing the best thing for the Union, once he got shot like that in cold blood, it elevated him to saint-like status. Well, immediately thereafter, keep telling the immediate story. He's in the box. They think that he's still alive. The bullet was not high-powered. It lodged in his brain. It didn't blow through the front of his face. It lodged in his brain. And he still had function of his body for several more hours. So he wasn't dead, but of course it didn't look good. Some people wanted to take him to the White House. Well, the White House was a carriage ride away. Cobbled streets, horse and buggy, it would jostle his body around. They thought, he's never going to make it to the White House. They took him right across the street. They take him to a place called the Peterson Boarding House, which that's it right there, still there today. Slade, it's not much of an attraction, really, right? It's kind of just a room. It's just a room where they have the bed that he died in. So Slade was there recently. The scene in the Peterson boarding house, very similar to this, where, of course, this is not a photograph, this is a sketching, but many people from the government gathered around. Many people from the government gathered around to watch Lincoln breathe his last. And he breathed his last at the next morning. So he does make it to April 15th, 7:22 a.m. He breathes his last. The doctor says, just like doctors do, they say he has now passed away. Okay, time of death is 7:22. And the Secretary of War, his name is Edwin Stanton, he says now he belongs to the ages, which is a very kind of spiritual way to say he has passed from life, but he is going to be remembered in history. Now he belongs to the ages. This is a picture of the bed. And I want to point out this picture here. It's a sketching, right? But it's a very spiritual sketching. It shows George Washington, the father of the country, receiving Lincoln into heaven. So it's kind of showing these two men as fathers of our country. They were reunited in heaven. There's angels around them. Obviously, there's a lot of Christianity going on there. Pretty interesting. So like I said, he was elevated to this like godlike, saint-like status, Father Abraham. This is the bed where Lincoln died. This is a photograph. Very chaotic in that room, right? They brought him in, they laid him down. His head was bleeding. Slade, one of the big things to see at the Peterson house is what?
The bed.
The bed and the
Pillow.
The pillow. Because the pillow has an outline of his head on it, and the blood is outlining where his head was laid down. So a lot of people like to see Abraham Lincoln's bloody pillow, and they think about Abraham Lincoln, father of the country. This is, Slade, is that about how it looks? This is a setup of the room. Okay, this is how it would have looked. If you go and visit it, that's what it looks like.
Why do they say every single thing? Like, people can die on the floor. They'll say the blood stains is that. Like, brain shards on the floor.
Especially if you're famous and you're connected to
blood
history.
right
Right. This is the only picture of Abraham Lincoln in death. Okay, there's actually a ban on taking his photograph when he was dead. If you Google Abraham Lincoln dead, actually, I discourage you from doing that because you will find some fake photos. So do not believe everything on the internet. This is the only picture of Abraham Lincoln in his casket. Actually, the Secretary of War did not want it to be taken. He said no photographs of Lincoln in his casket. This one photograph got taken. And actually, I should say, several photographs got taken. They destroyed the glass plate, which that's how they got printed back then. They destroyed the glass plate of all 5 or 6 of them, except for one. They say one glass plate, because even though his order was no photographs be taken, he recognized how historic, how important that photo is. So he didn't publish it right away. They didn't show it to the newspapers, but he saved it for history, and I'm glad he did. This is the one photograph of Lincoln in his casket. So, if you look in, you can see his face. You can kind of tell that it's him, but it's not like, it's not a grizzly head-on picture of his face. This is more Swanson story here. This is a bugle that was used in his funeral. And again, if you go visit places like Washington, D.C., you can see a lot of things. All right, I'm driving on because I want to get to our video. But wait, there's more. I'm going to tell you about all these things now. So after the night of the assassination, there goes on to be a 12-day manhunt to find Lincoln's killer. And when they're trying to find Lincoln's killer, they throw out a monetary reward. And this monetary reward was $50,000. Who wants $50,000? Me. Right? Guess what? Equal to about $800,000 in today's money. So, pretty hefty reward. And in fact, since there were several people involved, I'm about to tell you about the conspirators right here in a second. The total reward was $100,000. Basically, $1.6 million. So, hefty amount of money, but they wanted these people captured. Andrea, do you have a question?
Were you blonde?
I was like sun-in blonde, like it was fake blonde. It was like Justin Timberlake blonde. Tyler, they don't even know. They don't even know. Yeah.
We don't want to know.
All right, these are the conspirators. So even though Booth, hear me now. Booth was the one that shot Lincoln. The conspirators, and this is on your page here, okay? The conspirators had a wider part in the story. Killing Lincoln was not the only thing that was supposed to happen that night. The conspiracy was actually designed to kill 3 people at the same time. 3 people that are at the top of government, and the idea was we can cut the head off the Union. If we kill these 3 people at the exact same time, we'll cause chaos, and the Union will not have any leaders left, and the South can start the war again. Grant would have been a bonus, but they actually weren't planning on Grant. When he was going to be at the box, they were like, yeah, but then he didn't go, so he wasn't available to kill. So the first, of course, is Booth with Lincoln. He was helped by this young man here, David Harold. This is on your sheet, okay? David Harold can best be described as a fanboy. He was a follower. He was starstruck by Booth, and he was Booth's helper. So he's the one that met Booth at the bridge. They crossed the bridge. They went off into Maryland together, and David Harold is with Booth throughout the entire manhunt. David Harold is with Booth for all 12 days, from the day Lincoln was shot to the day that Booth is captured. David Harold was with him. Now he surrenders to the army, whereas Booth does not surrender, and he meets his untimely demise by the army. I'll tell you that story in a second as well. David Harold stays with Booth throughout the whole manhunt. Moving on. Ladies, what do you think about this fella?
Ooh, he a dreamer.
He's a dreamer. Yeah, a lot of times, here's another picture. Okay, Lewis Powell. A lot of times he is said to be an attractive prisoner, or he has a hot mugshot. Of course, this is the year 1865. Lewis Powell was a Confederate soldier.
What kind of camera they had
Okay?
back
He was the only one who was actually a soldier, actually fought in the army. He was strong. He was tough. He was considered the most physically tough and physically strong of the conspirators. He was assigned to murder Secretary of State William Seward. Secretary of State is in line to be the president. Seward was a very popular political figure. He was an abolitionist, okay, against slavery. So part of Booth's plot was to kill Seward in this mass conspiracy. Okay, Lincoln, Seward. Now what actually happens is that Powell, he knocks on the door. Again, before security, you just walk right up. He knocks on the door. He attacks Seward's son. He goes upstairs. He attacks Seward, who's laying in his bed. He bludgeons him in the head. He takes Seward to near death. But remarkably, Seward does not die. So even though he beat him up real good, but you could say Lewis Powell failed because he did not effectively kill William Seward. This is Lewis Powell. Next up is George Axelrod. He's of German descent. You can kind of tell from his name. He is best described as a simple man, a follower. He was also willing to just follow whatever Booth said. Some people might say that he was mentally handicapped. Now, I don't know exactly what that means. We don't have a doctor's diagnosis, but in our language of today, we might say that Axelrod was mentally handicapped or slow, however you want to say it, because he's described as someone who was slow of thought. Axelrod's job was he was assigned to murder the vice president, Andrew Johnson. Now, if you know your president, you know Andrew Johnson goes on to be the president. So murdering the vice president, of course, that would have really changed history. Well, Axelrod is the worst of the soldiers, you might say. He spends the night drinking. He loses his nerve, and he does not even try to go to Andrew Johnson's residence. He doesn't have a failed attack. He just has no attack. He doesn't go to Andrew Johnson's residence. So Johnson doesn't survive attack. He just doesn't even get attacked. Axelrod, big failure. Brings us to the next person, and she is a she. It's kind of notable. People were very surprised that a woman was involved in the assassination plot for Abraham Lincoln's assassination. This is Mary Sarat. She ran a boarding house where the conspirators met. Now, as running the boarding house, she probably heard about their plans. She probably understood what they were planning. She did keep weapons and supplies for them, but she did not participate in pulling triggers or stabbing people. She was just someone who knew about it. Now, as a little extra, her son was involved in the conspiracy. The reason these conspirators met at her boarding house is because of her son, John. John was involved in the kidnapping plot. However, John was not involved in the assassination night. He was actually most likely, now history's a little fuzzy, but he was most likely in Canada on that night. He was definitely a Confederate sympathizer. He was probably a Confederate spy, but history shows he was probably in Montreal, Canada on that night. So he escapes capture for several years, but he is eventually arrested and also associated with the assassinations. He wasn't there on the night, but he was a conspirator. So this is Mary Sarat and her son, John. These are the four big conspirators of the assassination plot for Abraham Lincoln. More than just Lincoln. The idea was to cut the Union government off at the head, right? Kill 3 people at one time, the Union will be in chaos, and the South can continue to live. Leads me to the manhunt, okay? It starts at, we're gonna pause on the bathroom for a second, okay? Let me get through my story here.
Who's Samuel?
I'll get to him, hang on, get to him. The manhunt. It starts at Ford's Theater, right? Booth shoots, he jumps, he yells, he runs away, but the manhunt continues for 12 days. He gets out of Washington, D.C. He goes to Virginia, which is a border state, part of the Union, but there's Confederate sympathies. And he crosses the river. He picks up weapons at one point, you're right. He crosses the Potomac River into Virginia. Booth's big plan was if he got to the deep South, he believed he would be received as a hero. Oh, John Wilkes Booth, you shot the president. You're our hero. In reality, that's not how people saw him. A lot of people were disgusted at this act of cowardice, shooting the president. They were okay with soldiers going at it on open battlefields. They understood that that was fighting for your country. But they were mad. They were angry. They thought it was cowardly to shoot the president from behind in cold blood. So people were not going to receive him like a hero. And that leaves him, he has to stay in the woods for several days. He's not sure who he can trust. This is all part of the manhunt. Well, on April 26th, he is at a tobacco barn in Virginia. And at this, actually, let me back it up 1, 2, Samuel Mudd. Along the way, he meets this man named Samuel Mudd. Samuel Mudd is in Maryland. He is a Confederate sympathizer. Okay, he's a Southern man. He's a slave owner. He believes in slavery. He's not overtly against the Union because Maryland is a border state, but he is a Confederate sympathizer. Samuel Mudd's story is confusing because some evidence points to him knowing Booth and maybe being a part of the plot. Other evidence says that even though he knew Booth, he was not a part of the plot. Well, in the story, Booth connects with Mudd on the night of the assassination because Mudd is a doctor. If you're someone who just jumped out of a balcony, landed funny on your leg, broke your leg, what might you need? A doctor, right? So Booth goes to Mudd on the night of the assassination. We do know that Mudd meets with Booth. We do know that Mudd fixes his leg, and he puts it in a splint and sends him on his way. What we don't know is whether he was aware of the plot. What we don't know is whether he even knew he was talking to John Wilkes Booth. Samuel Mudd says, hey, these 2 guys came to my house at midnight. They knocked on the door. They asked for help. I helped them. If you're a doctor and you're just trying to be a good guy and you're helping out a patient, that's understandable. The question is, did he know it was John Wilkes Booth? Did he know it was the man who shot the president? We will possibly never know because history never really discovered that truth. Picture here on the left, that's Booth's boot. Okay, a big piece of evidence was the fact that Booth's boot was found at his farm because he cut it off of his leg and then Booth left the boot there. Tools that he would have used. Now he is arrested. He is charged with the crime, and those are the handcuffs that were used for him. So Samuel Mudd, kind of an interesting character because we don't exactly know what happened with him. Gets me to the capture of Booth. Booth is captured in a tobacco barn. Okay, when the word is put out that there's a lot of money available to whoever captures Booth, a lot of people are trying to find him. And he's easy to recognize, okay? He's not an anonymous guy. He's got a famous face, right? He's a pretty boy actor. Now, he shaved his mustache off, just like I did, shaved his mustache off, but he's still a pretty recognizable guy. Well, the Union Army, a lot of soldiers, they start looking for him, called Manhunt, and they track him to this tobacco barn on a farm owned by some people. The family name is the Garretts. The Garretts also say that they have no idea who these 2 men are. They say, we hadn't even heard that the president got shot. Maybe reasonable because of how long it took for news to spread, but also they were Southern sympathizers. They were in Virginia, a Confederate state. kind of hard to know if they're telling the truth or not. We'll probably never know for sure. Well, on the night of April 26th, Booth is finally surrounded. Booth and Harold, they're together. They're surrounded in a barn. Union Army, do you think that they want to capture them dead or alive?
It doesn't matter.
It does matter. They prefer to capture them dead. Or excuse me, alive. They prefer to capture them alive. Because an alive person can do what? Talk to you, tell you what happened. You can put them on trial. You can get some justice, right? They wanted to capture them alive. What they do is they circle the barn and try to smoke them out. Set the barn on fire. When they set the barn on fire, David Harold leaves. He says, that's it, I'm out. I surrender. You can arrest me. John Wilkes Booth, though, he stays in the barn. That's right. Stays in the barn. The barn is surrounded and on fire. There's a soldier in the Union Army named Corporal Boston Corbett. Boston Corbett is at the farm on that night. He's got his gun up. He claims that as he's looking through the slats of the barn, he claims that Booth raised a gun to shoot him. Someone raises a gun to shoot you. What are you inclined to do? Shoot back. Boston Corbett says he fired in self-defense. He shoots Booth in the throat. It nicks his vertebrae. And he does not die immediately, but he dies 3 hours later. So Booth dies 3 hours later. Yeah, he basically chokes out, asphyxiation, because he can't breathe anymore. Well, initially, a lot of people are angry that Boston Corbett shot. This is not on your notes, it's just extra. A lot of people are angry that Boston Corbett shot John Wilkes Booth. They would prefer that he was alive. However, some people hold him up as a hero. Some people say that he shot the man who shot Lincoln. He's a hero. So kind of a mixed legacy on Boston Corbett there. It's mostly the middle part for me, right? A little bit the hair whiskers, but mostly the middle part. Well, of the many people involved, right? Many people were investigated. A lot of people were arrested. Only 8 of the arrests stuck. 8 people actually went to trial for the murder of Abraham Lincoln. And then the 4 that I went over, the conspirators, these 4 were executed for their role in the assassination of Abraham
So why
Lincoln.
did they get mad when they
David Harold, Lewis Powell, George Axelrod, and Mary Sarat. They were executed on July 7th, 1865. So think about how fast that is.
That's good.
April, May, June, July. Yes, this is them. Okay, there's their prison photographs. There's them at the gallows. And guess what? This is a real photograph. That is them hanging from the neck till dead. Kill the president, get justice. And it happened really fast. Now, the picture wasn't taken in color. This is called colorized. But I think it really brings it to life. Really shows how it could have been. It is kind of controversial that Mary Surratt was hung for her crimes. 1, that she was a woman. And 2, some people think that she didn't do as much as the others. But nonetheless, she was held to justice, and she was executed for running the boarding house that they met at. Here's what we're going to do now. All right, I went as fast as I could because we're getting to a video. We're going to watch a video for the next 30 minutes. If you need to slip out to the restroom, I'll allow it. But I'm telling you, it's a good video, and I hope you won't miss it. Hang on. This TV show came out in the year 2017. It's called Timeless. You got to suspend reality a little bit because it's about time travel. We are going to watch season 1, episode 2, where they travel back in time to April 14th, 1865.
That's Abraham.
Here are our characters. Okay, I'm going to introduce you to them. This is Lucy Preston. She's a history professor. Her job is to preserve history, the good history and the bad history. Even if someone dies in history, as a time traveler, she wants to preserve the history. Well, every good story has a bad guy. This is the bad guy. They call him Flynn. He works for the bad guys. The bad guys are Rittenhouse. Now, there's a couple details in the episode that might be a little confusing. He works for the bad guys called Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse tries to change history for their agenda. And that's the whole point of the show, is that Rittenhouse is trying to change history. So Garcia Flynn, he's the bad guy. 2 more characters. Wyatt, he's a dreamboat. Wyatt is a soldier on the show. He's kind of like the security. Rufus, he's a pilot. He's an engineer. He's a techie. He's the pilot of the time travel machine, the time machine. Again, we got to suspend reality because it's a time machine. The whole point of the story is that Lucy, Wyatt, and Rufus, they travel in their machine, which is called the lifeboat. They take on Garcia and Rittenhouse across time. They try to preserve history, whereas Garcia tries to change history. So let's see what happens when they cross paths on April 14th, 1865. What in the world could possibly go wrong? Now, on the back of your page here, all you need to do for 30 minutes is watch the show. But on the back of your page is some reflection questions. And I want you to think about, what if, I know it's out there, but what if we could change history? Would we? Would it be worth it? Could something good come from it? Could something bad come from it?
That's what I asked you.
That's right. That's right. So just watch the episode. It's really good. I got the volume turned up the best I can. If you need to slip out to the restroom, Mr. Taylor will walk with you. But I implore you, come back and watch the episode because it's really good, okay? Movie day in history class. Come on, guys. Let's just go. Go to the bathroom. On delay. Go and come back.
If I knew
Just trying to bring it alive, Brendan. Come on, ladies. TV time.
No TV time.
Yeah, come on. Quick place. All right, it's a really good episode. It brings it to life, and it's kind of interesting to think about if we could change time like this.
Everyone thinks they know the man, but nobody knows Lincoln. His wrestler, for one. 300 plays, only lost once.
What do you know about Lincoln?
I'm his bodyguard.
Where's your garden in that?
Next door watching the play.
Hey, Mr. Booth. It's been asking when we're going to be seeing you on the stage again. Soon.
But I'm spilling over with affections, which I am ready to pour over you like applesauce over roast pork.
that you are not used to the manners of good society, and that alone will excuse the impertinence of which you are guilty.
Don't know the manners of good society, eh? Well, I guess I know enough to turn you inside out, old gal, you suckologizing old man trap. That's the 6 separate Tyrannus! The South shall be free!
All you gotta do is take a picture.
Listen on the phone. I have to go. Now? I'm sorry. Sorry, Amy is a friend, and just want her to finish things out. Okay? Don't forget about tomorrow night.
So Flynn took out the mothership again, huh? Where'd he go? I don't know, I just got here.
Hey, what's changed in your lives? Since we got back from 1937, what has changed for you?
I just had an unsuccessful evening with a girl, so nothing real. Why was wrong?
My sister's gone.
Gone where?
Gone as in erased from history. Something that Flynn did or we did to the Hindenburg has changed my family. My mother isn't sick anymore, and my sister was never born.
Lucy, we have a dossier on you, and it doesn't say anything about it, sister.
Look, this is her, right here.
You wore this on the trip back to 1937? That is incredible. You took it from a timeline where your sister existed, carried it here to where she doesn't.
I do not share your excitement, Mr. Mason. Whatever changed, you have to change back. Change it back.
I'm sorry, Lucy, but Flynn is hours ahead of us. We don't have time for this.
Why not? We have a time machine, don't we?
Flynn could be decimating history right now. Our reality could change like that any second. You need to go.
Not until we figure this out.
Lucy.
Hey, you dragged her into all this. She just lost her sister. Give her a damn minute.
Flynn went back to April 14th, 1865. Now you need to get moving. And you need to eliminate Garcia Flynn. Are we clear?
Yeah, okay.
Wait, what's April 14th, 1865?
You guys know.
The assassination of Abraham Lincoln.
I forgot.
Hey, I can try to figure out what happened to your sister, if you want. How? Something happened on the Hindenburg that affected your parents somehow. I can look for a connection. Try to see what changed. Tell me your parents' names, birthdays, anything that can help. You would do that? Here. This is crazy.
Garcia Flynn. He went straight for Anthony. We knew he was the project leader, the best of our only 2 pilots. So how did Flynn know so much about us, our vulnerabilities? Is there a problem? What do they do with these recordings? Why does Rittenhouse even need them? Don't speak that name out loud ever again.
Time machine.
Trick or treat. Trust me, no one's more worth than I am that I'm not a real soldier. Where do these guys even come from? Civil War Reenactors Club? No wonder they smell like sweat and loneliness. Okay, oh, whoa. Just sit. Here, let me.
I was really hoping I'd never have to go this damn thing again.
Lucy, I'm sorry about your sister.
Thank you. For backing me on the page of my story.
Watch it.
Trust me. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix everything. Maybe you should get some paperweights. Tell me this gets easier. It doesn't.
Fourth of July, baby.
What's all that?
The Civil War just ended. They're celebrating.
Mr. Booth, I'm quite the admirer of yours.
Oh? What production did you see me in? Richard III?
Well, I'm not talking about a play. I know what you're about to do. I think I can help. Check out that swagger.
Civil War just ended. Slavery's outlawed. African Americans thought their future was bright, which pretty much ends tonight when Lincoln's shot.
So what do you think Flynn is up to?
He's got to be here to change the assassination.
But how?
I don't know, but I do know exactly where John Wilkes is going to be. So we start there. Best guess, he takes us to Flynn.
So Booth walks into Ford's Theater at exactly 10 a.m., huh? About 1956, 7.
Hundreds of books have been written about this movement today.
Let me guess. You read them all.
And wrote one of them?
Why is Booth coming here now? What is he, scouting for tonight?
No, he's an actor. He knew Ford's Theater like the back of his hand. Used it as his mailing address. Picks up his mail at exactly 10 a.m.
An actor.
Pretty well known, too, but his brother, Edwin, is literally the most famous actor in America. I'll never quite measure that.
So this is like if Donnie Wahlberg assassinated the president.
Pretty much, actually.
Come on. Hey, keep an eye on him, huh? Find Booth or Flynn. Get us fast. Let's go. Hello? Any of your books tell you where the mailboxes were?
No. Let's get up.
Okay. You want it?
No, I got it.
Okay. You all right there, Sergeant? Yes, I am. Sergeant. I'm just fine. What's your name? Denzel. Washington. I'm Nicholas. What about you from? Chicago. You was free when you signed up. You got 10 of young folks still in bondage? No, my family was all born free. So you reading right good, huh? Pretty good, yeah. That's how you got them stripes. Hey, boys, get on over here. Oh, Denzel's gonna write our notices for us. We need you to write something for the newspaper. You go and start with mine. I can't write. The color Tennessee, press them free. Nicholas Biddle, 2nd Regiment, Colored Infantry. That's me. Nicholas Biddle of the 2nd Regiment, Colored Infantry, wishes to learn the whereabouts of his wife and 4 children. Children are Celia, Sarah, Elizabeth, and Adam Lee. My wife's Ann. The last I seen her was in a cell pen of a human trader named Robert Clark in Manhunt.
Hey, miss. I'm General Grant's aide.
You're Robert Todd Lincoln.
Have we met?
No. I admire your father.
Pleased to meet you, Miss.
Juliet. Shakespeare.
Are you an actress?
No. Yes. Not a very good one. Just starting out.
I'm something rarer than an actress. A modest one. General Grant was supposed to attend tonight's play. He can't make
Lincoln
it.
told his son,
Turn his
in real
tickets.
life, he was
Well, I'll take the tickets to the box office
I'd
parade.
like to leave a note to the General's apologies.
the other children.
Of course.
did, but not him.
Take your time.
He lived until 1911, and he was 83. So he's the only Lincoln son that lived full life.
You know, my father's coming to the play tonight. Have you seen him?
It's
Does
not
he
that
have
good.
Nope.
Not sure.
Should tell him not to
Not
come.
sure if they're still living. Back on track.
Having President Lincoln for a father. What's that like for you?
He casts a long shadow. It's not one I mind living in. I'm proud of him. He's done some good things.
I agree.
And he's just getting started.
So what are you gonna do once you find your family?
Work me a piece of my old master's land.
Think the man won't just gonna give you his land?
How I think President Lincoln's gonna make it.
I'll smooth sailing from here on out.
What's that supposed to mean?
I'm sorry, nothing. I didn't mean anything.
What regiment you in?
The 4th, colored infantry.
Fourth color. Yeah, I never heard it. What about y'all fight?
We fought all over.
This ain't no real uniform. You pretending to be a soldier? Well, after what we went through, what? So you can get your girl? Look like some big hero? You go on, you lying rat.
I'll see they get it right away.
John Wilkes Booth. Robert Lincoln. I saw you on stage here last month.
Of course. Why are you here?
My father invited General Grant to see tonight's play, and I'm helping him escape it. I assume you know Miss Shakespeare. John Booth. She's an actress.
Really? What do you perform?
I'm new to the profession.
And very humble. Miss Shakespeare, do you know Mr. Booth's brother saved my life on a train platform just last year? Pulled me out of the path of an oncoming train. It's a true story.
Amazing.
That's Edwin. Always the hero.
Yes, sir. The Lincolns of the Booths. Great debt.
So we're 1,000% sure we can't just shoot this asshat. Save Lincoln here and now.
Believe me, I want to. It might change things too much.
Maybe there'll be a lot less luxuries. I'm serious. I'm serious. Just let some black soldiers. We know Lincoln's death. It's going to be a disaster for them. Not to mention my great-great-grandparents. Don't look at me. I'm with them.
I understand, but we don't know the consequences. It's too risky. It's our job to protect history.
Yeah, rich white guy's history. A lot of my history sucks. Look, I know it seems crazy, but maybe we can change things for the better.
This is our union house. We're both of these as conspirators.
What conspirators?
You what? Hey, look, don't stop for anything.
What about you?
They're back.
What happened?
Come on, go!
So they brought some. No, they brought it with them. That's what changes the history. They They brought
You
semi-automatic.
better not get the fag in the thing.
For Dungeons all.
No, thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
I love guns.
Oh, where the hell is Rufus to these supplies?
You need a real doctor.
To do what? Leech me? Get this on me. It's gonna take 15 minutes to pass back home. You're gonna die of sepsis.
You did it?
Rufus, you're up. My knife's in the pocket. You got sterilized over the land. What? The bullet's still in there. It's just under the skin, but you gotta take it out. Why me? Because you work with your hands. Yeah, on circuit boards. Think of me as a circuit board. It's gonna die if you don't help.
Don't look at me. I faint.
Oh. So those weapons, Flint has. Why does he need that kind of firepower, huh? Lincoln gets killed anyway.
I don't think it's just about Lincoln. Lincoln's death was part of a much larger conspiracy to kill the four most powerful men in government in one fell swoop. Lincoln, Vice President Johnson, Secretary of State Seward, and General Grant. It would have been devastating, but the other shooters never followed through or just failed outright.
Well, that's before they had semi-automatic weapons.
Exactly. What if Flynn is trying to help them succeed? They would cripple the Union, maybe revive the Confederacy. Hell, Johnson and Grant are supposed to become presidents. America, as we know it, would be unrecognizable.
Okay, so how do we stop all that?
One problem at a time. Grant takes a train out of town at 6. I need to make sure he's on it. You take care of Wyatt. We're gonna need you tonight.
This is gonna be the worst game operation ever.
Mr. Lincoln,
What are you doing here?
following you, it seems.
I'm a lucky man.
What happened to the train?
Technically speaking, it broke.
Oh,
Much to General Grant's dismay, he and I will be seeing a play.
no. Like I said before, it's a terrible play. The general will hate it.
It could be, but the General and I are already committed. But is there any chance that you'd like to see a terrible play?
What?
Excuse me for being forward, but would you come as my guest? You'd improve the evening a great deal. We've met twice in one day. That can't just be a coincidence. Do you believe in fate?
I'm at the National.
The National? It's 7 then.
You really have to stop eating like this.
You son of a bitch. My sister is gone, disappeared because of something you did to the Hindenburg.
It's war. I lost my whole family.
Because you murdered them.
Rittenhouse murdered them.
I asked about Rittenhouse. No one's ever heard of him.
Rittenhouse isn't the him, it's the they. And that's why I'm here to right some wrongs.
By shooting up half of Washington, trying to destroy America outright.
I'm not trying to destroy America, I'm trying to save it. You'll see. One day, you're going to help me.
Or what? You'll kill me?
That's not a threat. It's your future. So accept it and stop trying to interfere.
What are you trying to do? What does this have to do with Rittenhouse? Tell me!
Don't get in my way again.
Some cemetery for throw up one, you know? You went shopping?
Robert Lincoln invited me to a play.
Play? You mean the play?
General Grant's going to be there tonight. Flynn sabotaged his train.
You saw Flynn.
I saw him leaving the train station. The point is, Grant's gonna be there tonight, and I've gotta save him.
How exactly?
I don't know. I'll get Grant out of the balcony before Booth shows up, somehow.
I'm pretty sure we can come up with a better plan than that.
Will these help?
I assume with all that, we're gonna save everybody but Lincoln?
Rufus.
All you have to do is open your mouth to save him. And you're just gonna let Booth shoot him in the head?
Do you think any of this is easy for me? My whole life, I've idolized Lincoln. When I was a little girl, I would memorize his speeches.
Well, then do something.
We would come back to an entirely different world. Who knows if it would be better, or if there would be anything left to come back to at all. The present isn't perfect, but it's ours. Awful as it is, what happens to Lincoln is meant to be.
What about my wife? Because by your logic, you're saying that bad things like my wife's death are meant to be. You wouldn't use the time machine to save her either? Wow. You are saying that. So, your sister is supposed to live. My wife is supposed to die. Is that it?
It's not fair.
You just lost your sister. And you're gonna sit next to Robert Lincoln and let him lose his father. Never seen nothing like it.
Where'd you get these? We're Prussian. We make good guns.
Seek semper tyrannis. The South shall be free.
Use this instead. It's ugly. It fires 17 bullets. You won't need the knife. I like the knife. Just take it. The Derringer is more dramatic. Now, I appreciate the weaponry you provided us, sir, but I have staked my fortune and fame on this spectacle, and I will see it through as I imagined it.
Mr. Robert Todd Lincoln, downstairs for Miss Shakespeare.
I'll be down in a minute. Now, please, you'll save Secretary of State Seward, and you'll save Vice President Johnson.
Yeah, we got it. Lucy, just think about who you save.
Some other people would when you found out that he was not the inheritor of that fortune.
What, the heir?
Fortune? No. People bark up the wrong tree about the old man's property.
Which he left for you.
Well, no.
He's always late.
Which is nearest.
I wish I could be sure of that, for I have been cruelly disappointed in that particular.
Yes, but we are all
It's true, he was late to the play. They stopped it. They played the song to announce his entrance.
Mr. Shakespeare, allow me to
What would you do?
Mary,
This moment right here.
Father, President, Father, please meet Juliet Shakespeare.
Shakespeare, how do you do? It's a great pleasure to meet you.
She never did this before this. Because she's nervous all over the place.
So, all I gotta do is save the Vice President of the United States. Sure, no problems. Relax. When the Sarat guy shows his face, just point him out to the Vice President's bodyguards to do the rest. Just in case.
Mark one.
What if I freeze? You won't. I grew up on the west side of Chicago, and there's There's this kid, Rich Tannen, who used to come after me. But I wouldn't fight. There's no fighting.
All right, so I just,
tomorrow.
yeah, I got off time a little bit. We're having a good conversation. We will take it into tomorrow. So you can look at these questions, kind of think about what your answers might be so far. We will finish it though, so you don't have to do it just yet. And then also, something I didn't pick up today was Friday's notes. It was the personalities of the Civil War. John's got them right here. So this right here, that's blank. That's no bueno. I'm gonna give us grace for today and pick it up tomorrow. So personalities of the Civil War. This page 4 needs to be finished. Everybody tracking on that? I'll pick that up tomorrow.
I think that's
All right.
The whole line of. Hey, slow down, we don't finish it. Cause y'all had to take a bathroom break.